Welcome into another Inside Carolina postgame show. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. I am Tommy Ashley. That is Rob Harrington. We are talking about a North Carolina win, 88-82 in the Carrier Dome. I don't care what the new name says. That's the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. Rob, either way, I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to be the Jackson and Jae'lyn show.
That's
Both
right.
played.
Yeah, if you're going to start with the two positives, I think it was the breakout games for those two guys. Of course, Jackson's already had big moments this year, whereas I would say Withers overall has had a really disappointing season. However, in my opinion, I think if this team is going to accomplish anything of note, I think Withers has to be out there. I mean, obviously, you may not love everything that he does, but at least he gives them a legitimate front court in terms of size because you can put him with either of the two centers, Washington or Lubin, and you have a legitimate high major front court, at least in terms of size and strength. And I think they need to build from that. So it was great to see. He played a lot of minutes. He played very well overall. And this is one of multiple victories they'll have to put together consecutively to even be a factor for the NCAA tournament. But before you even get to that, I mean, just to get a road win, there's one. Try to put the distaste of the Clemson foul up behind you. See what they can happen. See what they can make happen next.
Yeah, I mean, gigantic game coming this week, I believe Wednesday night in the Smith Center for a lot of reasons. But as you mentioned, they've got to stack some wins. They get this one at Syracuse, 88-82. Let's break down Withers' game just a little bit. 7 for 10, 3 for 4 from three, made both of his free throws, ended up fouling out 24 minutes. Hit 6 rebounds. He makes those. Somebody in the chat hit it, and I want to. Matt Windor said he's a love-hate player for sure. He is, because I've always thought Jae'lyn Withers is better than he plays. He'll show flashes, and then he just goes off the rails. Rob, what'd you see differently tonight? I saw engagement from the beginning. I think he likes starting and likes being out there. But I mean, he also likes playing against Syracuse. They mentioned on the show that he's had some great success. But to your point, Carolina traditionally plays two big men. I know it's a different style and a different look, but they look better on offense than they've looked in several weeks, maybe. I mean, we can talk about Ian Jackson in a second, but purely Jae'lyn Withers, I just think he does things that nobody else on the roster can do. Tell me why I'm right or why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game was a little bit of an outlier in the sense that Syracuse played so much zone. And in some ways, that's conducive to a good Withers game because he doesn't have to handle the ball as much. He's going to get wide open shots, but that's okay because it's not like he has a hard time getting open shots most of the time. I think more to your point, he was more into it from the beginning. And again, I just think it normalizes the lineup, and it's too late in the season to worry about, okay, how are we going to play all of our best players, that being guards, because that grouping just hasn't worked. I mean, it goes without saying, it just hasn't worked. And if they have to sit a couple of guys or cut minutes, that's just what they have to do because they're way past the point where they can be concerned about anyone's reputation or feelings. They can switch it around from game to game if they want to, but I hope they will build off of this foundation with the Lubin or Washington Withers 1-2 punch, and you just live with it and see if that dose of size, putting Drake Powell at the three, enables them to match up better physically, especially when they get back into playing better opponents.
Yeah, and I think Drake Powell's a better three than he is a four. I mean, we saw on that defensive play where he got the backside block. That's what he does. And him having to guard guys significantly bigger than him. Not saying he can't do it. I just think it frees him up to do things that are more helpful for this team. And somebody in the chat said, who doesn't look good against Syracuse? It's accurate, but Carolina hadn't looked good against anybody lately. So this is baby steps moving forward. Another guy that sort of came back after having a great stretch, then getting in the upper echelon of the scouting report, we'll say, and struggling. That's Ian Jackson. And I thought he's another guy that looked very engaged at the beginning. Didn't start 23, 8 for 15. He took 10 3-pointers, which I'd be surprised to know when the last time somebody not named Caleb Love or R.J. Davis took more than 10 3-pointers for Carolina. But what'd you see from Jackson? I thought it was another guy who we've called out for effort earlier this past week, and he came to play tonight. Again, New York kid playing against a New York team, so it maybe had something to do with it, Rob, but Jackson's game.
Yeah, that's right. I thought the most important thing for him, was he hit his first shot, and that just he needed a confidence booster. I never bought into this thing where he checked out. I know that was going around after the Clemson game, and I agree that his body language out there hasn't been reading real positive. But you have to be careful with that stuff. I think a lot of times players get frustrated, and people will see that as, oh well, he has big reputation, NIL guy, he's checked out. I don't think he's checked out. I just think he needed a confidence hit, and you saw him come to life when the first one goes down. He hits a couple more. It wasn't a perfect game for him, but it was very good. And I especially liked the fact that he was being smart with the ball for the most part. He wasn't forcing plays. I thought, yes, he took a lot of threes, but they were good attempts. I thought by and
Mhm.
large, Syracuse was playing them to take those threes for good reason because it hasn't been a good shooting team. But tonight the Heels were making them and they got wide open shots. So I hope they'll continue to do that. Understanding they're probably not going to shoot that well consistently, but it was just great to see Jackson have a few go down. I still think, and we were talking about if this team is going to accomplish something, what the rotation may look like. I think if we agree that Withers needs to be in there more at the 4, I think Powell more at the 3, Jackson Davis is the 1 and the 2. Not to bury anyone else, but I think things are coalescing in a way. To me, the most backcourt firepower is Davis and Jackson, and then your best size up front is one of the two centers along with Withers.
Yeah, I've said all year that I said it on the steps of the Smith Center. I've referenced this comment more than I've referenced 12 and 0 probably, and folks in the chat know what I'm talking about there. Cadeau didn't have to start this year for them to be good. Obviously, everybody thought he should and he would, and he did. But Rob, this team is better when one of those two is not on the court. At least in my eyes. We saw it again tonight. Carolina made a little bit of a run with Cadeau sitting on the bench, and then Cadeau came back in. To his credit, and had a nice layup there, and hit a little pull up jumper, I think it was. Just sort of I mean, are we in the tinkering phase still this deep into the season, or is it Hubert playing guys who've been there and have shown some consistency and not making those kind of plays that have us all throwing our hands up? What are you seeing with that lineup?
I think he's right to not get too down on Cadeau. Cadeau obviously had turnover problems again tonight, foul problems again tonight, but he still is the only player who can play make out of all the guys they tried out there. He's the only one who can do that, who can set up other people, which was the original design of the offense. And he's the one who can do it. I think obviously he has to play better, and maybe part of the answer would be some Cadeau, Davis, Jackson lineups, although that one's pretty small. There again, though, if you have a bigger front court, maybe you can get away with it, and then you rotating in a lot of Powell and a lot of Trimble. But I think I do think that Jackson and Davis need to play the most minutes together. However, they work with the other guys, and that's understanding that Cadeau will play a lot and probably still start. I don't mind him in the games. I know that he's had some issues, as mentioned, with the turnovers, but he's had a lot of big stretch plays this year, especially on defense. And then tonight, he made a layup after he missed one against Michigan State. That was painful.
Mhm.
This one was a really big play after he had a bad play. I thought that was a great sign for him. You could see him slow down when he took that layup too. Like he was sure he was going to make it. And so I like that. You look for any signs of progress. I thought that was a nice show.
Props to Drew in the chat talking Carolina baseball. I'll drop a video a little bit later of Grace Nugent and myself talking Carolina's sweep of Texas Tech, but that's not right now. Baseball this afternoon, basketball this evening. We're talking with Rob Harrington. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, sponsor of the show. You need some swag, you need some cold weather gear, go get it at Johnny T-Shirt because it's going to be cold in Chapel Hill and nasty by Wednesday. Johnny T-Shirt can hook you up. Also, Congruity, Matt at congruityhr.com. They will help you out with your small to business needs. Their logo's on the screen. Check them out. Rob, I know you love just sitting there when I'm paying the bills, but I appreciate your patience. I usually try to stick this stuff in later, but wanted to get out there, and I wanted to shout out the 460 plus people here. I was starting to wonder a little bit, right? Carolina loses. There's 600, 700 folks flaming mad in the chat, and it started out a little slow tonight after Carolina gets a win, but we're pushing close to 500. Rob, anywhere else you want to go on this current game on what you saw? I did find it interesting that Trimble had some significant moments sitting. When they went with that lineup, Cadeau only 18 minutes, Lubin only 19 minutes. We've talked about roles and consistency and all that. For you watching this team, what did you see today that maybe surprised you coming off that Clemson game? I know
More than
Syracuse.
anything, yeah, more than anything, I just wanted to see them show some fight and not collapse. If they had lost this one, I think you would probably not just have lost it, but if they had, say, lost by 10 points or something, you'd have said, okay, this team has quit on the coach. I didn't think they would do that, but you never know. We've seen it before in football and basketball. I don't think they've quit on the coach. They had some rough stretches for sure. I mean, there was nothing that I saw to say, oh, they finally figured it out. I don't think we'll even know that. Even if they win, I'm looking at my screen now, 4 of the next 5 games are against teams that are not even in the top 100. I mean, that's how bad the ACC is.
Yes.
So you're to some extent, we just won't know, even if they do start putting together wins. Nevertheless, they do need to put them together, and it's still worth something. So from a bird's eye view, just from a record point of view, I mean, a team that entered tonight, 14-11, if say they could win 3 or 4 in a row, and it looks like 18 or 19-11, at least it looks like a more respectable team. And then they might play a relevant game again against Duke. I mean, that's how far down the road you have to go because they're going into this week's stretch. But just in terms of, that aside, just in terms of washing the Clemson game out of everyone's mouths, and somewhat the first Duke game too, very ugly performances, to come back and get a road win, historically a tough place to play. Syracuse obviously way down, but still, their crowd was into it. It was a nice win.
Yeah, I mean, and look, when you're struggling to put a acceptable product on the court and you get a win, that's a good thing, period. To your point, Rob, the ACC is awful, brutal. I mean, you look at the SEC and the game tonight's surrounded by SEC games. I mean, they play ranked games, every day of the week. It looks like in the SEC. How many ranked games have there been in the ACC this year? Ranked on ranked, like 1, maybe. I mean, it's insane the difference in level. But Carolina still's got to win these games because if you lose them, and I want to ask you about Wednesday night when North Carolina State comes in, because if you lose them, if you're Hubert Davis and this North Carolina program, we haven't seen the bottom. If NC State comes in here and has something for Carolina. Now, how do you grow from today's game, Rob, and going into the NC State game, knowing they're not very good, knowing that it's NC State, what do you expect to see there? And what will tell you that Carolina is somehow progressing, that Hubert is somehow progressing this bunch along here this late in the season when it's close to being all lost, but there's still a glimmer?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see them win some emphatically, especially when they go home. You've got 2 bad teams coming up, State and Virginia. It's not the Tony B era anymore. That's long gone. These are bad teams. You're playing them at home. They need to win those games emphatically, and start to look like a decent team because they go life and death with all these opponents. Sometimes they win them, sometimes they lose them. That's been a big problem all season because you can say, oh, well, if they hit a basket here or there, their record, they might be in the tournament, but it could have easily gone the other way. They just very rarely get positive separation. So that's what I'm looking for. If you're playing a bad team, dispose of them the way that you ought to and start to just look like a higher caliber outfit. We're not really going to be able to probably conclude from any of these games if they win them, that they've necessarily turned the corner or that Hubert is, doing a much better job coaching the team. I doubt anyone watched the game tonight and said, oh yeah, Hubert has finally figured these guys out. Because even if that were true, we wouldn't know. And it didn't look like that because it looked like the same team they've been all year. But Can they string together these multiple games? If they do not beat NC State at home, that would be the bottom. I think they have to beat State at home. That's not one of these aspirational types of games. You just can't. I can't even countenance them losing that. They have to win that one. If nothing else, you get your sweep of State this year, which isn't enough. But you at baseline you got to sweep State. So I'm just going to assume that they win, understanding that it's not a given. But I am assuming they win it because I just can't even contemplate a loss.
We'll be sitting in these chairs Wednesday night whenever that game's over, and I don't know if I want to. Part of me thinks about we might just have flames on the screen or something. There's not going to be a situation, but I think to see in Jackson bounce back after people had said he had checked out, including I thought maybe we're done here. I've done all I can do. To see Jalen Withers, who we've piled on a lot, have a good game. I don't care if it's Syracuse, like I said earlier. You want to see these guys have some positive moments. We'll check out the press conference to see how the press conference was after this. Rob, anything left? Go anywhere you want to go. I'm going to open the floor. It doesn't have to be basketball. It doesn't have to be anything. Rob Harrington shares his views on whatever before we get out of here. And shout out to 505 people in here in the live chat.
I think it is at least 1 month too early for baseball. I mean, at least. I can't believe that you're doing baseball already. It's February. I'm speaking from New England, so it's even worse. But I can't imagine the Red Sox taking the field right now. I don't know how you guys are doing that. You should get hazard pay for doing baseball in February.
Well, they jacked up the heat in the press box for the old guy today. And, but it was nasty out there today. Shout out to Carolina and everybody being able to get 27 innings done in that series. They played 2 yesterday and 9 today. Against Texas Tech. But yeah, I agree with you. February baseball is like no fun, but that's how it works on college level. And folks need to check out the baseball team. They're good. Drew was talking about it in the chat. You've got freshman guys that are just flat out dealing on the mound already. Scott Forbes has got it rolling. And if basketball frustrates you, check out the baseball team. It'll take your mind off. And also check out the women's basketball team.
Yep.
A gigantic game tomorrow against NC State. Carmichael is sold out, packed out. Look forward to coverage of that. Look forward to watching that as well. That's Rob Harrington. I'm Tommy Ashley. Carolina 88-82 in front of a lot of people, but not nearly a full Carrier Dome. The JMA Dome in Syracuse, New York. We'll be back on Wednesday night to talk North Carolina State action. And shout out to the rest of the podcast crew, coast to coast, and all those that'll be coming down. It's always here at Inside Carolina. Get your Carolina news right here. Johnny T-shirt and congruity. Everybody stay safe.